Welcome to Between Friends, where embroiderers gather. I'm Eileen Roche, a longtime embroiderer and co-founder of Dime. If you're a regular here at Between Friends, then you probably know I'm a tool junkie. I love tools. I love sewing tools, kitchen tools, embroidery tools, woodworking tools, you name it. I'm intrigued by tools. And I guess it started with watching my father work with his tools. He was a master carpenter, among many other talents. And when I was 5 years old, he built the house that I grew up in. It was a mesmerizing process for a little girl. You know, my favorite part of that process, if my memory serves me correct, was after the foundation was laid and the crew started on the framing. To see that framing go up and become a two-story structure where there once was just dirt was truly amazing to me. Even today, the sound of a table saw and the smell of sawdust takes me back to my childhood. On a smaller scale, I remember being mesmerized by a hand planer as the wood peeled off in curls. Can you picture that? Isn't that the coolest thing to see those wood curls? And so maybe that's where my fixation with tools started. And then let's fast forward many years, and I fell in love, later on in life with machine embroidery. And it just so happened to be at the right time when machine embroidery machines became available for the home embroiderer, like you and me. And even though those machines were available, the lack of tools was actually astonishing. I was self-taught like many of you are, and I was new to the hobby. And I thought, well, I guess the experts don't really use tools. They're probably just good at it, and they've learned from others in the craft. And I thought, well, maybe there's a steep learning curve to this, and it'll just take a while to become proficient. And it did. It took a really long time. But during that time, I came to realize that I wasn't the only one struggling with these embroidery tasks, like where to place the embroidery on an item, and then how to hoop that item so that the embroidery landed exactly where I wanted it to. And so if you think about that, every embroiderer needs to master those two tasks, right? Even the icons who we, or at least I thought, could do anything when it came to thread and fabric. They also struggled with placement and hooping. And so I discovered this when taping my second series with Nancy Zeman on Sewing with Nancy. And before we get to that story, I'm going to check the comments and see where everybody's tuning in from, because I think a lot of you also like tools. So I see we have a pretty nice crowd that's already started to grow. Linda Brooks, you say you love Dime tools. Well, me too. Thanks for that great comment and vote of confidence. We love that. And who down here is Linda Johnston is saying Dime is the solution company. We do regard ourselves as the solutions company. But, 25 years ago, the crew here was also struggling with embroidery, those of us who were trying to do it. So, it's been an evolution for sure, been an evolution. It's so nice to see everyone here. Goodness, people are typing, joining us from Pennsylvania and Texas and Michigan, kind of all over. And Linda, your dad was an electrical contractor and he loved tools, and your basement was the company. So that's where his work was located, and it was full of tools. Well, I have to tell you, my dad, he didn't have that many tools. He wasn't as intrigued with tools. He could use one or two tools and do things that, if it were me, I'd have to go buy 5 tools for, right? But he was a skilled master carpenter with a fabulous eye, and he didn't have to depend on a lot of tools. So, just because you are a serious maker doesn't mean you have a lot of tools. But those who do, those of you who are like me, I love it. No problem, right? I'm a believer in using the right tool. And if there is a tool that's going to make the task easier, all the better. all the better for sure. Because, you know, life is a lot faster now, right? When my dad built our home, that was in 1965, no cell phones, no cable TV, probably, three channels that turned off at 9 o'clock or whatever. So, you worked hard days, but you had quieter times for sure. And let's see, Susan Wiggins, your dad, let's see. Oh, let's show that. Your father was a carpet layer, so he had those two tools, but he also had a woodworking wood shop in the basement. And he taught you to respect those sharp blades on the machines. That was great advice. And today, as an owner, I imagine, Susan, of many rotary cutters, or at least one, and those sharp blades, you respect that blade. And every time you use it, you probably flip that click or click that button to close the blade, right? Almost no matter what brand of rotary cutter that you have today, they all, have an on and off switch in the sense of extending the blade out or bringing it back in. Thank goodness, right? How many disasters have happened in the sewing room? My friend, Sandy Randall, she was working in her sewing room recently. She had sandals on, dropped a pair of scissors. And how do you think they landed and where? Yep, right on her toe, point down. Out of all the surface space that she's standing on, and just that one toe, right? How big is that? And that's where they landed. She had to off to the emergency care center and get it looked at. But anyway, so speaking of tools, okay, now we'll go back to our story. Now somebody here said something. Donna, you said that you liked Nancy Z. You went to one of her classes. Wonderful. Yeah, well, many of us know Nancy from television, from PBS. She was she really kind of broke into sewing or teaching on television, right? Before Nancy, there was Julia Child, and that was about it, right? So she really broke all the barriers and brought sewing into our living rooms. And but she also taught live. So many of you had the opportunity to meet her in person, maybe go to Beaver Dam to one of her great events, or see her on the road somewhere else. So let me just make sure I'm catching all these. Susan Wiggins says, yes, always close that rotary blade for sure. Yeah, and many people don't. You watch that on video. Yeah, well, things that you see on video, I will tell you, we break all the rules when we're doing live things, and many of you have witnessed me doing that myself. So, and let's see, Sandra, your father made kitchen cabinets from scratch, and you spent many a day making dowel holes and then adding the dowels. Sanding doors is another memory. You used some big tools, and now you like the small tools. It's great to have those memories with your parent, isn't it? I hope that maybe you're taking the time to pass down some of your skills to your children or grandchildren, so they have memories later on in life with, making, right, and using tools. So let's see, Janie, you say Nancy taught you so much about sewing and machine embroidery. Oh, same here for sure. Same here. Oh, and Marianne Dublagla says, so when she bought her first embroidery machine, it came with a whole library of Nancy's CDs. How cool is that? How cool is that? Well, here, I'll tell you what I used to do when my children were, like if they misbehaved, right? I would make them, this is when they were like, probably fourth grade, maybe third or fourth grade. If they would misbehave at home, I would make them sit in a certain chair and watch me on Sewing with Nancy for 15 minutes. That would be their kind of punishment, their quiet time. Yeah, it kind of helped their behavior. Because, the last thing a child wants to see is their mother talk about sewing. I can tell you that. Let's see. And Mary Ann, your dad was a great carpenter and built houses, and now your son is a cabinet maker. Oh, and dad's tools were passed down to your son and husband. That's wonderful. Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Oh, and Dawn Chase, you have a great memory that you helped your dad finish the basement, adding a bedroom and a bathroom. Wow, that's really industrious, right? And Jill Ross, you taught your daughter-in-law just started sewing, being able to guide her with the right tools is the best. Yeah, you are really helping her get up to speed quickly if you're sharing your skills, much more advanced than hers as a beginner, right? And let's see, Margaret Cummings, you went over to Nancy's in Wisconsin. You have a picture of her and your best friend when you were there. She was wonderful. Oh, she was just so great. And Jeanette, you have at Nancy's eBooks and learned so much from family sewists and quilters. Yes, passing down these talents is important for sure. You know, I still have many of Nancy's books, and I was just working with Amy McCarthy on a project, and I brought a Nancy Zeman book. You know, it's about fitting and so forth. And I said, you know, Amy, take a look at this, and you know, it just kind of sped up the process of what we were working on. Okay, so let's go back to work here. Thanks for all your comments. It's great to learn about your families and your own interests. So when I discovered, right, let me back up a little bit. I said, you know, I kind of always assumed that if somebody was an expert in fabric and thread, they weren't struggling with the same things I was struggling with. I figured it was, you know, my own shortcoming, right? And, but then, you know, I was on the set of Sewing with Nancy, and it was my second series there. So I used to go for 2 or 3 days, and we would tape 3 shows, and that was considered a series. And so my second appearance there was in 2005. And here's a look at the companion booklet that's sold after the show. So let's take a look here. You can see this. You know, when I look back at these fashions, I mean, Nancy was like, wow, that is just fabulous. And now, oh, well, things have come a long way, right? So this was just, here's the blank beginning. You know, of course, we bought 2, and we took off the collar and made it a Nehru collar, added a grosgrain ribbon down the front, embellished this area of the bodice, and then, you know, a opposite hem decoration. We shortened it. And then we decorated pants. Now, if you knew Nancy Zeman had great style, and she was a tall woman. She was 5'10". She could wear clothes like a model, and she had a great eye for a fashion. So I imagine she never wore these pants around Beaver Dam. But anyway, Nancy and I'm teaching how to do this in software, how to lay out all those little designs, right? And then we would print out the templates and then replace the templates with Target stickers, and then hoop the fabric, the pants. And there were lots of tips about how to do that. And then individually, we would embroider each individual design. Each of these templates would, it represents a single embroidery design. We didn't really have the ability to merge all that together in software. It would be too large of a hoop. Now, these are illustrations, so they're not true to size or anything. But, you know, this was 2005, right? I think the largest hoop at that time was probably a 6 by 10. And anyway, so let's go back to PowerPoint because I want to, or let's go to PowerPoint so I can show you that same thing in PowerPoint. And so here's Nancy and I at another time, but here's the cover that I just showed you and the inside. This is the section that we just examined in the overhead view. But here, this image here is Nancy and I at that table. So that's, you know, there were different scenes on the Sewing with Nancy set. There was the table scene, and then actually at the machines, both of us or one of us would be, you know, camera would focus on just one of us. So, you know, you plan all this days in advance. Believe me, it's a lot of work. It's nothing like what we do now. Oh, I think she'd be horrified. Well, she wouldn't, because she was a modern woman and loved change and was, you know, many times the first out the gate with new technology and so forth. But we're a lot looser today on a Facebook Live than we sure were on PBS television. So we were at that table, and I'm laying the templates, and they're on the pants now. And now we have to take those pants, they're hooped, over to the machine. And I do that. I put it on my machine, and she says, now, how much do you rotate the design? And I said, oh, I don't know. You just eyeball it. And she looks at me and says, don't you think we need a tool? And I, you know, stops you in your track, right? But we're taping. So, I mean, you know, cameras were about to go back on. And then we finished the rest of the day. We had a great taping. It was a lot of fun. And then I got on that plane that night and I thought, yeah, we do need a tool. Goodness, I've been struggling with it. She's struggling with it. I imagine a lot of other people are too. So I get on the plane and I kind of start sketching ideas on what kind of tool would we need to be able to determine the required rotation of those templates, right? If I didn't hoop absolutely square, how much am I going to have to rotate it? So I did some sketching in that notebook. And then the next morning, back in Dallas, I went to, a big box store, and it happened to be September. So the back to school aisle was full of school supplies. And I bought every protractor and compass that they had and brought it into the office. And then my good partner, Gary Gardner, who we've been partners for, almost 30 years here at Dime. And, I said, this is a problem. We really need to fix this. And he just kind of looked at me like, okay. And, but then, I gave it more thought. I made a working device. And next thing I know, this is Gary. He calls the patent attorney. He said, I think we really have something here. And we did. So I got my first patent. And, that was very exciting for me, so exciting. And today, the angle finder is included in our embroidery toolkit. And that's our special, our sponsor of today's program. But here's the angle finder. And it's a two-part tool. So you see that round circle? That's a wheel, and it actually swings. You can turn it. And the square disc has straight sides, right? It's square, and you use them to align with the hoop. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I have an image, and then we can also go to the overhead cam to give you a kind of a live view. So as you can see, I have the edge of the angle finder is parallel with the side of the hoop. And the center of that angle finder is aligned with either a template or a target sticker, whatever you have. But you need a crosshair on the fabric. And then you just swing that top dial. So let's go ahead and do that. I have a tote bag here hooped that I think will show this quite well. So as you can see, I didn't do such a good job of hooping, right? So here's my attachment. I am hooped, and my crosshair is parallel with my seams. And that's how I would want my embroidery design to stitch, right? Like if I was going to say summer, we'd want the bottom of that text to be parallel with these seams. So easy to use. I'm going to turn this so it's in the position as it would be if you were using it. And I'm going to take my angle finder, and it's flexible, which is kind of nice, and it's translucent, so because you want to be able to see right through it. And then I'm going to locate the 0 on the dial. Now these numbers don't move. These numbers here, 0 to 360, are printed on that square part. And so I'm just going to center that crosshair, the grommet, right over the crosshair of the target sticker. And I want to make sure that I'm parallel with the edge of my frame. And if you're in a monster hoop, make sure that your top frame is aligned with the bottom. And then hold on to the bottom square, and then just take that dial and rotate it so it is sitting, that red arrow sits directly on top of that arrow underneath. So red arrow and black arrow are aligned. And that is telling me, well, I guess I need to come up because you can't really see. That's telling me that I need to rotate my design 283 degrees. So I'll lift that up a little bit closer, get that glare out of harm's way. And now you can see how it's telling me to do that. And then at the machine, of course, today we have the ability to just punch that number right in to the machine. And I don't have to worry about it being disaligned or, out of not being parallel, the word summer with the bottom, with those seams, right? So it's so cool. And, and many of you, Patricia Roberts, you love it, and It's a handy tool, I can tell. And I know the machines today, oh my, the bells and whistles that we have, so many of them have cameras and scanners and all kinds of stuff. But sometimes you still need to just verify the exact rotation. And that little tool is so handy, I can tell you. And A. McCarthy, you said, what a great story. You love the actual, can you believe I have the actual sketch from the plane? It's amazing. That was a blessing. It's not exactly saved in a, like in a throne or a throne area or the trophy room or anything. It's just a sketchbook that I've had for a long time. Yeah. So let's see. Okay. Jeanette says Eileen R, Nancy D, Donna Jordan, Joanne B. Well, I'm still here, and it is terribly sad about Donna Jordan. Those of you who are a big fan of Donna Jordan, she's an online YouTuber. Right now I'm drawing a blank as the name of her store, but just Google or you'll find her. You've probably already watched her. She's wonderful. And let's see. Oh, Right Design. You're watching Sewing with Nancy on PBS every day. Oh, good for you. Get it here in Texas. That's kind of a bummer. So. Anyway, yeah, so that, and Yasol, you say that you need to save this whole session. It's here for you. These sessions don't go away. They're on YouTube forever. Well, hopefully forever, right? And they're on Facebook. I mean, that's the plan, that this library of content that we create, it stays there as long as nothing happens to those platforms, right? So Francie, thank you so much. Donna Jordan was from Jordan Fabrics still. That's why that's why it was too easy, right? Too easy. So, okay, so what else is in that embroidery toolkit? Well, let me show you. There are some other really handy tools. There are the adhesive centering rulers. I know the inch ones that everybody still wants. Well, they're still in there. So, if you enjoy them, then you can most certainly use them on a variety of different things. It comes with 3 centering rulers, different sizes, and they're so handy for finding the center of something. Zeros in the middle. And then measurements are in equal increments, moving outwards from the 0. So as long as you use, like if you're trying to find the pocket of a seam, then, or find the center of a seam, no, the center of a pocket, you would align the same measurement on the seams, and then obviously you'd be right in the center. And Linda Johnston, you love the centering rulers. I know, boy, they're wonderful. And again, they're lightweight plastic, so they're bendable, right? They're flexible so that you can measure something that's hooped, because that's our big challenge for sure, right? And Lisa Schwartz, you struggle with getting embroidery design straight on your shirt. It all starts with the initial finding the center. If you're going to do center chest, you have to find the center of the shirt and mark that at the neckline with a pin. And then, we have templates for that. But as long as you find that center and you use an embroidery template, which is something that you print out of your computer, or item templates like our centered chest. Here, I'll show you this under the camera. This is really quite handy for, so this is, we have a kit that comes in all sizes for men and women, and it has different shapes. It has crew neck and V-neck and also a scoop. But if you find the center of your t-shirt and mark that with a pin, and then just align this line with the ribbing, this line with your mark center, and then this is the top of your design. You just place your design template, right, aligning it with this mark, and you're good to go. And we have lots of tools for that. We have the embroiderer's helper for left chest, which is a little different. Okay, so what else is in there? We also have target rulers. Now, target rulers are, I absolutely love these things. So they have they have legs and arms, right? And they have a hole in the center for your target sticker. That's just brilliant. I have to tell you, it is just brilliant, because the first ones didn't have the hole. And so we were lifting the target ruler, and sliding that target sticker underneath, and then it wouldn't be aligned and so forth. But this, I just love that. Absolutely love that. So, They come in 2 sizes, the 6x6 for smaller hoops and then the large 12x8. Now let's take a look at why you use them. So here I am finding the center of a pocket. And a pocket is a rectangle often. Rarely are they square. So it works on rectangles. It also works on squares. I'm going to show you that next. But what I'm making sure is that, see the red circles? So we want to make sure that the top of the pocket, I have a zoomed up version here so I can see what that measurement is. Yeah, so that's hitting at the 2 1/4. So vertically, we want the top of the pocket and the bottom of the pocket to hit the ruler at 2 1/4 inches. On the right and left, it's just 2 inches on each side. And so if you position your ruler like that and place a target sticker dead center, then your monogram or whatever you're going to put there, it will come out just perfectly. So love that. Okay. Now in quilt blocks, this is that target ruler, the big one is so handy. So now I'm making sure that those inner points, right? The inner points of that star are hitting the target ruler at the same spot, right? In all 4 places, because it's a square basically. But when you're hooped, when you hoop that fabric and there's that large pink star in the center of the hoop, it's really difficult to find where the center of that star is, right? So that's where that target ruler comes in so handy, because you're going to make sure equal increments, and I think it's through 1.5 inches or close enough to that, is going to hit on all, the arms and the legs of the target ruler, and you'll just be fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. So at Quilted says the code free ship is invalid. So if somebody could check that on my team and help out Sew It Quilted, they will we'll get that fixed. And then Sarah Lynn, your grandfather was a wooden pattern maker, and he always said if you use a tool once, it's paid for itself. I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. And in fact, many of you probably know that I love to quilt and I love to piece and I love AccuQuilt dies. And sometimes I have trouble justifying purchasing one of the dies. And then I think, but yeah, if I use it once for one quilt, it's actually a lot of use, right? So I'm always thrilled with that because my rotary cutting skills are not so great. Okay, so another great use on that target ruler. Are you going to love this? I love this. Okay, so now I'm in the center of a block, and I'm going to place an applique in that middle. And I have found, this center by using the target ruler, but notice I taped it onto the hooped quilt block. And I have my target sticker in the middle, but I leave all of that on the hoop. And then when I'm at the machine, I center my needle over that target sticker. And remember that a target ruler is taped in position. So it's not going to slide when I use my navigation keys and move the design. But once I'm happy with my placement, I always do another step of verification. And that's by using the trace feature, but not going all the way around the design, just going top, bottom, left, right, north, south, east, west, whatever you want to call it. And see, I've added some yellow lines to the slide there to the target ruler. And so I want to make sure that when I go to the top of the hoop, to the north part of the hoop, that my foot stays aligned with that target ruler. If it stays right on that line of the ruler, oh, I know I'm perfectly square. So, because if I'm not, then I would get my angle finder out and rotate that design a little bit and make it just work fine. Okay, so let's see what else is in there. I love that. And of course, it comes with target stickers for sure. Now, I've shared with you what's in the embroidery toolkit, and it is a fabulous product, and it's just so useful. You're going to find lots of reasons to use it. Those target rulers, I have like an overhead lamp that is attached to my hooping area, clamps to the table. And I actually hang my target rulers from there because I want them that handy when I'm hooping. They're just right there. They're always within an arm's reach, and they don't get misplaced. Let's see, and Right Design, you say you bought a lot from OESD last year and this year and Diamond. Well, thank you so much for your business. We really appreciate that. We are so grateful for all of your purchases. It's what keeps us in business. It's what keeps us providing new product and new ideas for you. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. Okay, so I also, in our promo of today's show, I said, I also use some household tools that do double duty. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of them. And, you've probably seen a lot of these before, these ideas, but I just thought I would give you my take on it. And so here's an example of 5 different tools that, you would have around the house probably. And I'll show you what I do with them. Okay, so my camera on my phone is one of the most invaluable design tools that I have. So this little seascape is, I'm almost afraid to tell you how old that is. It's really old, but anyway, maybe 1999. And it's great, right? Like you see the angelfish, you can see the pink jellyfish, you could see the orange seahorses, the ray at the bottom and the seashells. But see those fish swimming up in the left-hand corner? You see their bellies, but you don't really see the top of them too well. Well, I wasn't wise enough back then to use a camera and take a photograph of the threads on the fabric before stitching it. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here is an image of 4 different shades of blue. And as you can see, when you look at them on the left side in color, you can kind of see what would really pop. But when you look on the right side and remove the color and you're only showing the value, that's when you can really see what is going to have the most contrast and what is going to blend with that base fabric. And sometimes we want to blend and sometimes we want to really contrast, right? Quilting thread, we often want to blend. So it's a great way a great tool to use for selecting the quilting threads. And it's also great for selecting your embroidery threads because you may have thought, spool 2 and 3 would be best, but really maybe it's better 1 and 2, depending on what area of that blue you're going to stitch on. So anyway. Let's see, Kathy Colvin, she says, how did I not know about these? What useful tools for placement, especially since she's placement challenged. Kathy, we're all placement challenged. Believe me, that's why there are tools, right? And happy belated birthday to Kathy Colvin. Okay, so let's see. What else? What other tools do we use? Well, a skewer. I use a skewer here all the time on Facebook just to point out things under the camera, but it's so handy in the hoop when you're adding applique or if you're doing in the hoop projects and you're trying to keep a seam open or a zipper tab out of the area where the foot's going to travel. Don't use your finger. Please use a skewer. There's so many embroiderers who have horror stories about stitching over their finger. And, if you use a skewer, that won't happen. And if you stitch over one of these, doesn't matter. They come, 50 for however, $2 or something. So, keep several by your sewing machine and you'll be really happy. Now, Susan Wiggins, you use the skewers to get thread out of your take-up lever. Yeah, excellent, because it's skinnier than your finger and can probably get in that track, right, and pull out that thread. And sometimes you can finagle it without opening up the door, which is quite handy, quite handy. And Patricia Roberts, you use chopsticks as well. And chopsticks are great. They have a wider, it's not really a point. They're usually blunt, right? But that gives you a really nice, strong hold on fabrics and so forth. And let's see, creative appliques. Dawn, besides your scissors, you use a stiletto, skewer, all ice pick the most. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And let's see, Judith Whitlock, you're guilty of that. You got your finger. Yeah, I'll bet. And so did our good friend Joanne Banco once. My sister Marie has done it. So, it happens to the best of us. And we think, oh, we know exactly where that needle's going, right? Maybe it's the 10th time you stitch that design. So you get a little overconfident and, so anyway, use a skewer. Use a skewer. It's good. Okay. What else? In the kitchen, the baker's rack, right? I call it a baker's rack. It's really a cookie drying rack, right? It's air circulate around your cookies after baking. It is great for freestanding lace because also you want that to dry fairly quickly, right? And if you can put it on a terry cloth towel or a linen towel, and that will dry. But I find if I do that first and blot it on the terry cloth, get as much moisture out as I can, and then if I lay it on that drying rack, the cooling rack, it dries so much faster and just lets the air circulate around it. And so Francie, you say you love these tips. Oh, I know we all love tips, don't we? And Carolyn Morrow, you use a knitting needle. Well, that's brilliant. I mean, they look a lot like a skewer, right? I don't knit, so I don't have them in my house. But yeah, it's a good idea for sure. And let's see, Catherine Keller, you said, what? That's a great idea. It never dawned on you. Yeah, well, just make sure you rinse it off afterwards before you put the cookies on it. And Carolyn Booth, your cookie racks are only used for freestanding lace. A lot of your kitchen tools get more use in your sewing room than your kitchen. True, absolutely. And I hate it when my cookie sheet is up in my sewing room, right? And I make cookies and I don't, I have to go hunt it down. So have to. There's no harm in having to. Okay, what else is next? Well, this is probably one of my all-time favorites. And, it's relatively new in a sense because we didn't have these, 5 years ago, I think. So these are the friction removable markers. Now, you absolutely have to test on your fabric. And if you live up north, they are thermal sensitive. So they are removable by heat, but they will come back in the cold. So, but I'm in Texas, doesn't get that cold. So I love them. I love them. So I want to go to the overhead cam and show you how I use them. Of course, you'll use them for a gazillion different ways, but I have a good method, an embroidery method that I use them for. And so let's see, I have a quilt here, a baby quilt, and maybe you can see that design on it, right? Okay, so it's in progress, like so many things. Okay, and I'm going to open it up, and I just want to illustrate to you what's happening here. Okay, so this template here is showing you, I can pull this one out. This one is showing you what is already stitched. I've already done the whole column of A designs, right? This is the Emily Scott method of edge-to-edge quilting, right? So that's where the A is, and I've already hooped. And so this template, I just have this here so you can see the design because, it's tone on tone and it's hard to see the quilting. You can kind of see it over here in the white. But when I'm in the midst of doing my A column, I write in the area next to it, the B. I just put a letter B there. So I know, switch designs, you're going to use the B template now. And then I take so I do that in the friction. Oh, and I want to turn them on my iron. This only takes a minute to heat up. And then I just draw on the connection point right here because, it's white thread on this really light fabric. And if I'm at the machine doing this, right? How we just advance right under the needle, it's hard to see. So then I can take my template, my B template, and just line that right there, stitch my design, and it's going to be perfect. It's going to be just perfect. And then I'm going to remove after, and I'll do this over the whole quilt, only if I'm using a thread that's not going to be that visible. So, you don't have to do this on every quilt. You don't have to do it on every connection. But, if you're particular about your quilting, and I know many of you are, because you spend a lot of time making these beautiful projects, you want your ends to connect, right? That's the whole idea of being successful with edge-to-edge quilting. And I mean, it's just beautiful. And then if you have a projector on your machine, or you use a scan, you can use a template like I do, print and stick, so handy. But maybe you're using the projector. If you have that on your machine, then all you're going to do is illuminate that beautiful design and make sure it's connecting with that mark, right? Okay, and then let's see, is this hot enough? Yeah, it's hot enough. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the B. That's gone. And now I'm going to get rid of it on the thread. And it's great. That's it. Nobody knows. I can't send it to Wyoming, but no, I'm only kidding. Yeah. And what size hoop is that? That was an 8x12. That's an 8x12 there in that. And okay, Sandra Atkins says, she just found her embroidery toolkit, which she never used. She's had it for years, and you'll be using it now. Good. I'm glad you are. Like one of our friends said earlier, if you use it once, it was worth the investment. So use it. Okay, I have one more tip that I want to share, and that's about the, oh goodness, what's that stuff called? The press and seal. Okay, so let's go back over to the overhead. I want to show you that. Let me clean up my mess here a little bit and bring that in. So if you remember, I think it was right before Christmas, I had my friend Linda Johnston on, and I think she's watching today. And we did a fun project together, kind of a technique it's her technique. She did a fabulous job teaching how you take a regular traditional applique project, from a quilt artist that doesn't do machine embroidery, and how you turn that into how you digitize and so forth and turn it into machine embroidery applique. So that was that class in December. We're not talking about that now, but I just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed where this started. So, like so many of my projects, not done, but everything's still in place. See, I used that press and seal, and I just put it right over all my pieces, and then it'll stay like that until I'm ready to work on it. And I can roll that project up, and I can toss it in a bag or storage. And usually I just roll it and kind of leave it rolled like a scroll so I don't get any creases in it. But, I'm going to be ironing it a million times probably. But isn't that handy? And, these are pretty big pieces, so it's not that hard to keep them together. But if you have a lot of little pieces, this press and steel stuff is great for that. Just great. So use that. Use that. Okay. So many nice comments about our software. Delu, you say all Dime software, the most easy to use, to understand and use, user-friendly. You bet. And, Ashley Jones is here twice a month on the first and third Tuesday, teaching software success. And my goodness, that woman is brilliant. She just shares all her knowledge. This week she taught, I learned one thing from her this week was that you can have a split screen in our software. I literally never used that. I literally never even knew it. So we all learned from her. She's brilliant. So anyway, lots of fun in store. Lots of fun in store. I hope you use these tips and look around your house, right? What other tools are there that you could use? I do have others. I just didn't share them today because, we're going to save something for next time, right? For sure. Okay, so speaking of Ashley Jones, she's going to be back here on April 15th at 1 o'clock talking all kinds of software. And one of the best things I love about her program is she works pretty quickly, right? Because she's quite brilliant, but she goes through all those steps in the software. But at the end of the show, she then highlights the features that she showed and what software programs of Dime that those features are in, because they're in multiple programs. And she wants you to know that you probably have that program, even if you think you don't. So it's so helpful. So sometimes you might find that if you're watching one of her shows, a rebroadcast, to just fast forward to the end and catch that slide to see if you have that software. And if you don't, well, you can see about purchasing it. You can also use a demo mode of all of our software in the software that you own. So if you don't have my quilt embellisher, but you do have my lace maker, did you know that you could play in my quilt embellisher? You can't save the design in there, but you could get to know the program. So anyway, she'll walk you through all that for sure. She's just fabulous. Okay, so let's see. Just making sure. Let's see. You couldn't get that chart that shows. Can you repeat how? Well, it's at the end of her program, towards the end. It's not the last slide, but just kind of, you can, we have all those tools right on YouTube and Facebook. You could just use that slider and advance through the design, and then you'll see it's blue. It's like a bright blue and light blue chart. You'll find it. Okay, Marianne de Blaglia, you love Ashley. I know, she's so valuable. We all love her. She's so young. She always looks so young and never ages on camera. And we always tease her about that. She loves it. Okay, I'm going to be back next week, and I have a new product reveal. I'm so excited. We love that. That floats our boat here at Dime for sure, and yours too. So we'll be happy to share that with you. And please don't forget to like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because when you do that, that lets us know we are providing the information and educational material that you've been looking for. So thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it. Next up, we want to see what you're stitching. So please share your projects on social media using the hashtags DimeSewAlong, On the House, or Exquisite Thread. And we will find them and we'll put them in a video to share. Okay, so this week is, well, you're going to find those free designs on our website, right? Just go to embroidery, move down to free designs, and you'll find all of the designs for the year. And this week, I have a quilting design for you, which is our cute little hoops, our snap hoop monster hoops that I've digitized for you. It's not really edge to edge because you're not going to connect stitch to stitch, but as you can see on the right-hand side of that stitch out, it just kind of, nests together really nicely. You can't really tell that they're not stitched together, and it just makes for fast quilting. And it's a quilting design that maybe you'll use on something that you're going to make to decorate your sewing room on. So I hope you enjoy that design. And I'd like to thank you for joining me today. It was great to have you here. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the 10th and with our new product reveal. Bye for now.